you, Bron. Good morning, afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. So yes, my name's Carly with UNEP, and I am responsible for the team looking at active mobility and also digitalization and mode integration of transport. So it's good to be here today and having this conversation and trying, as always, to make sure that walking and cycling is not overlooked in the climate discussions. And I think on a really positive note, there's more momentum for investing in walking and cycling in Africa than there ever has been before. And, you know, we saw the focus at the last COP and the declaration for accelerating the transition to 100% zero emission vehicles. And even that declaration, as much as it focused on electric, it did recognize, albeit right at the end, that alongside the shift to zero emission vehicles, to have a really sustainable future for road transport, we require a wider system transformation, including support for active travel. But in order to make that transformation a reality and to retain and protect the 1 billion people already walking and cycling in Africa every day, we all need to act. And of course, we can't act individually. We need to come together, whether we're here as governments, banks, academia, civil society. All of us need to work in partnership, because walking and cycling is often overlooked in the climate conversation. And the only way to really build that momentum and change is if we have one voice. And I think what's really key is we need to prioritize investment in the needs of pedestrians and cyclists, and we need to do it urgently, because the impact on climate is real. And the way I look at it is every dollar we refuse to invest in walking and cycling is another person who chooses not to walk or cycle for a short trip because it's not comfortable, it's not convenient, it's not safe. So instead they use motorized means. And at UNEP, through our Share the Road program, we're the lead agency for the Africa Network for Walking and Cycling, along with Walk 21, who are the chair. And we hope that by partnering and collaborating, by bringing together all of these different partners with very different goals and objectives, but with a singular vision to prioritize the needs of pedestrians and cyclists, that we can get the attention and investment that's deserved and so desperately needed for people and for the climate. Thanks, Bron.
Great, thank you, Carly. It's the context that we need, and people are continuing to join us, which is really great, because this session is going to be that we're going to hear from some of the expertise around the subject in the area and in this region, and then we are going to have a very critical interactive brainstorming session. It's a proactive workshop, and we'll take these ideas away with us. So I look forward to your contributions when we come to that aspect of the agenda. But for now, to set some context, I'm pleased to invite Juliette Ritter, who is our coordinator of the Africa Network for Walking and Cycling, who's going to share a little bit of an overview of the relationship between active mobility and the climate agenda and the Africa Network with this group. Thanks, Juliette.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Juliette Ritter, and I'm the network coordinator for the African Network for Walking and Cycling. By profession, I'm an urban planner and a transport planner, and I also lecture at the Technical University of Kenya. So just take you quickly through basically what we are as a network, and also just to touch on how then walking and cycling comes into such an important conference where they're discussing issues to do with climate change. The topic for this sidewalk, this side event, is building momentum for walking and cycling across Africa. And as Bronwyn has mentioned, we are really looking forward toward exchanging ideas into how we can build this momentum for walking and cycling. So we have to appreciate, of course, within an urban setting, that most of the climate change is, we have a lot of impacts, especially on human settlements and vulnerable people, especially those ones in informal settlements, and also those who are socially marginalized in urban settings, especially in developing countries such as those in Africa. We have, of course, transport coming in as a key contributor to greenhouse emissions, and is also one of the key sectors or one of the key services which is also impacted heavily by climate change due to destruction infrastructure if and when these advanced climatic changes happen. The question then we ask ourselves usually, and not only as a network, but people who have an interest in urban mobility and especially active mobility, looking at walking and cycling, is then how do we bring in the value of walking and cycling as an agenda that should be pushed forward when we are looking at climate change. And one of the things, of course, we have to appreciate, and we have been discussing this within the network, is how we can measure the value of walking and cycling so that we can really put a case out there for walking and cycling to be to have really more investment into these non-motorized means of transport, but also come up with new ways of measuring and probably indicators that would help us when we are looking at pushing this agenda of really putting a case for walking and cycling. So of course, we have to appreciate some of the studies that have been done, of course, right from this, the organizers of this conference, the UNFCCC, they published a methodology where they tried to bring out the parameters that can really be used for comparing the impact of emissions using various means of transportation. And this was measured by the emission factor per passenger per kilometer, comparing walking and cycling, of course, with other motorized means of transport, but also looking at motorized bikes, of course, then asking ourselves what goes into the production of electricity that is used to fuel these electric or motorized bikes. So really the discussion is out there, and we are then coming back to the network and really trying to figure out how then do we build a case for really pushing this agenda for walking and cycling. Of course, we have to look at the monetary value, and the monetary value I have given just an example here in terms of how we can measure the level of emissions that have been saved from the environment and how much that would cost in terms of mitigation measures. Of course, the health benefits that are associated with walking and cycling, the economic benefits, which is a two-way traffic, of course, in terms of time savings, in terms of how much people are spending on that actual activity, and also looking at the other side for the government in terms of their tax revenue. We also look at social benefits, and that really has to do with the softer issues of it, looking at how we push forward more equitable transportation. We are creating more livable environments for people and enhancing security and everything else that goes with anything that is socially beneficial to the people. And of course, the last thing being the environmental considerations. And this really has to do with how much resources are we using for transportation? How much emissions are we putting out there by the mode of transportation that we are advocating for? And of course, with the agenda for walking and cycling, we're really saying we can achieve more or less zero emissions, as well as, of course, issues to do with noise pollution. So then we ask ourselves, then how does the network come in? And I'll just touch in terms of what the network is. This is the African Network for Walking and Cycling, for the sake of those who are not our members. And really our goal is to see how we can contribute to making the life of people that walk and cycle in Africa safer, healthier, and more comfortable through our combined actions, expertise, and influence. So we are really looking at bringing in various organizations, various expertise, people in academia, people in government, bringing them all together so that we can really tap into their knowledge, into their resources, and see how we can really push for having a safer and more healthier environment within the African cities. So our approach really is to serve as a platform to champion best practice and influence research, policy, practice, strengthen partnerships, and really share experiences and knowledge within the network. So that's basically our objectives, which is pegged into the main goal that I highlighted. And to achieve our main goal, we have 7 working groups. which really look into various aspects that are related to walking and cycling. And we need right from research, looking into the financing, looking at how we can support governments or really push the agenda for walking and cycling with the government, building on the data for walking and cycling, supporting and building capacities for NGOs, civil societies, and really how that also we look into the interface of public transport, walking and cycling. And lastly, we also look into rural mobility. So really, then how do we come in terms of what we are working on in a network that we can really plug into the agenda for climate change? And I just want to touch on two main issues. Of course, we are really looking into how we can track where investment is in terms of walking and cycling. And this would also help us to see where the money is coming from. How then can we influence so that we can get more funding into walking and cycling projects? And also now this is plugged into the other question that we had initially in terms of how do we build a case for walking and cycling? Of course, then by doing a bit of research, building key indicators that would help us really make projects for walking and cycling more bankable. And being more bankable, then we can even explore opportunities for green funding for walking and cycling projects. So thank you very much. That's in a nutshell, just bringing in the network and what we are doing. If you want to join us, you can follow that link or email myself. I'll be able to assist you with that. Thank you very much, and over to you, Bronwyn.
Great, thanks, Juliet. The network is there as a resource for everybody. And so we want to, as you saw, we don't have a working group for climate per se. And potentially we're looking at how each of the working groups can support this agenda over the next year. To help us understand the transport and climate change statistics, an understanding for the region that the MENA Climate Week is happening, I'm really pleased to pass to Shivam Ghai from the SLOCAT Partnership, Sustainable Low Carbon Transport Partnership, to share with us the statistics from the Transport and Climate Change Global Status Report. Thanks, Shivam.
Of course, thank you for the introduction, Bronwyn. So like she said, I'm here today to present some data and statistics and what's really going on, the bigger picture, the bigger transport picture, if you will, in the MENA region. So with further ado, let me share my screen. And I hope that's worked perfectly.
That's great. Thanks, Shivam.
Excellent. Okay, so today I'll be presenting the SLOCAT Transport and Climate Change Global Status Report, 2nd edition. This tells the global and regional stories of where we are and where we need to get to urgently on climate action in the transport sector. It has contributions from more than 150 experts and organizations. You can call it a one-stop shop for the latest available data, targets, policies, showing that it's imperative to accelerate radical action for sustainable transport and climate in this time of unprecedented change. So today, for the next 5 to 10 minutes, I want to go over the regional story of MENA with you all. So here we have a MENA snapshot, if you will. The MENA region is a unique one. The first thing that truly does jump out to me, it's a region that has countries with an incredibly diverse set of incomes, including high-income countries, predominantly in the Middle East, and lower-income countries, predominantly in North Africa, both with extremely, or you could say high urban populations and growing motorization rates. As you can see at the bottom, the urban population share was at 68% in 2020. The chart on the top left shows us that MENA's transport emissions increased 19% between 2010 and 2019. In 2019, MENA emitted 567 million tons of CO2, which is 1.24 per capita, tons per capita. Excluding international aviation and maritime, this has contributed to about 8% of total transport emissions. So while several countries have recorded a decrease in transport emissions, more than 10, the majority of the region have reported above global average emission growth. With regards to the chart on the top right, Africa, along with the Middle East, is an emerging hub for automobile manufacturing, led by several new plants, for example, open in recent years in Morocco. So car ownership is rising at twice the global average in MENA. Middle Eastern countries have some of the highest car ownership levels in the world. 2.6 million new vehicles were sold in 2019. In North Africa specifically, growth in car ownership stems primarily from the importation of used vehicles from other regions. Africa imported the largest number of used vehicles at 40% during 2015 and 2018, the Middle East at 12%. Here we have some examples of what we uncovered from the region that dealt specifically with transport, new technologies, modes, and of course, walking and cycling. Dubai in the UAE and Kairouan and Mahdia in Tunisia have made efforts to implement active mobility into their plans. Dubai enabled the operation of bike sharing services with 3,500 bicycles distributed over 350 stations. In Tunisia, work on pilot projects on the development of sustainable and shared mobility plans. In terms of electric mobility, the first venture is focused on the introduction of electric public buses. Additionally, you could say MENA countries initiated several high-speed rail services in support of more efficient intercity travel. Examples of this were found in Morocco and Saudi Arabia. Public transport offerings were expanded through bus rapid transit systems, but still at a slower pace than any other region in the world. If you're interested in any of these sort of country level deep dives at the national level, you can check out some of the country fact sheets of ours. I'll be sure to send that link at the end. So now that we've got this picture of the region and the trends within it, we can sort of ask ourselves, what are countries doing at the national level on climate action to tackle these issues, or we could say opportunities? And with that, we can take a deep dive into the NDCs, the nationally determined contributions, and long-term strategy in the region. So in MENA, 14 of the 20 countries have submitted second generation NDCs. The countries account for 55% of MENA's transport CO2 emissions. One long-term strategy was submitted by Morocco, featuring both short-term priorities. An example of this could be vehicle efficiency standards, and medium-term priorities. An example of this could be zero-emission vehicles. Major transport CO2 emitters in the region, including Iran, Egypt, Algeria, have yet to submit their second generation NDCs. So there's still an opportunity to mitigate a large portion of emissions in MENA. Some key insights to note from this slide is that most countries in the region do not include a specific transport greenhouse gas reduction target in their NDCs. However, most of the NDCs include other transport targets, including road vehicle technologies or alternative fuels. Among the non-greenhouse gas transport targets, increasing the use of zero-emission vehicles had the highest share, 40%, as we could expect, followed by improving vehicle efficiency at 29%. Transport system resilience is only included in 30% of MENA NDCs, with a focus on road infrastructure. Other key priorities we found, or at least mentioned, or that we believe should be prioritized, are behavioral change, demand management, and urban mobility development. So here we have three different graphs. I know it's a lot to take in, so let's take it step by step. Here, the chart on the top left shows us that between first and second generation NDCs, many more countries included actions on transport electrification, which went from representing 4% to 22% of all measures. Compared to all submitted NDCs, MENA had slightly stronger focus on improving vehicle fleets and switching fuels. So 58% of all actions in MENA compared to 50% of actions globally. With regards to the chart on the top right, specifically on adaptation, only NDCs from Iraq, Lebanon, Palestine, Qatar, Syria, and the UAE contain transport adaptation actions. These focus mainly on structural and technical solutions. Of course, globally, transport adaptation measures in these NDCs largely focuses on general structural and technical solutions, especially, and this trend is more pronounced in the MENA region, is my point. At the bottom, we can take into account avoid, shift, and improve as a framework, something that, if implemented well through integrated, intermodal, balanced approaches, is critical to unleashing the full benefits of sustainable low carbon transport. So growing evidence shows that avoid and shift strategies can account for 40 to 60% of transport emission reductions at lower costs than improved strategies as well, in fact. Second generation NDCs in MENA are not very well balanced, or not well balanced whatsoever, between avoid, shift, and improve measures. There is a significantly stronger preference towards improve. The trend towards that can be observed in all regions globally, but the changes are specifically prominent in MENA. 40% of NDCs refer to electrification, as I mentioned earlier. So in terms of the share of electrification modes, the majority of those remain in road transport. With that, it's essential that electrification of transport is supported by renewable energies. But then again, chart at the bottom right, you can see the comparison between alternative fuels, e-mobility, compared to other actions. And in fact, Morocco specifically links transport electrification measures. It's the only country that mentions that exactly. Lastly, and very quickly, I'd like to identify just a few actions that we consider necessary to enable sustainable low carbon transport, and if done correctly, can really empower the livelihoods of the populations in that region. Of course, considering the availability of solutions and the urgency with which action must be taken. So examples of this, I won't go through all of them, can be Dubai, which formalized the informal taxi industry while keeping it financially stable. This works well as a transport system that connects people, can entice a prosperous society, and works for a system of multiple modes and services. Or, as mentioned a bit earlier, in Tunisia, they worked on developing sustainable and shared urban mobility plans, giving walking and cycling and public transport the priority, as they're, of course, as we know, the most efficient modes in terms of use of space, energy consumption, emissions, and have the biggest social value per dollar spent. I'm going to wrap up now. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you found that insightful and interesting. Of course, I look forward to working, I hope we can use data and statistics such as this to move forward better, not just now, but throughout the year, towards COP27, towards COP28. SLOCAT, as the official co-focal points to the UNFCCC, are aiming to do exactly that. And we look forward to engaging you all and the network for walking and cycling in these processes. And thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Shivam. That's really good to see the numbers, as always, because they matter, and to understand this region in particular and how it positions or how it sits against the rest of the world. Of course, the numbers mean that governments have to act, and that's what the nationally determined contributions are. And we also need to see that embedded in government frameworks, policies, and commitments. So I'm pleased to pass over to Jim Walker from Walk 21, who's going to have a look at that mapping of the government commitments in response to the climate agenda, and if they've got that national sort of investment in walking and cycling as well as at the global level. So I'm very pleased to pass to Jim Walker from Walk 21.
Yeah, thanks very much, Bronwyn. I just wanted to share with you a few slides where we've been looking particularly at the policy in an Africa context. We've been thinking about this around the world, and I have to say right from the beginning that our data is limited to what we could find online, what we could actually understand in terms of languages, and we did rely heavily on people like the SLOCAT database, the UNFCCC databases, which was really helpful. It may not be a fully and 100% comprehensive, but I hope it's a good start. And let us start by sharing with you a sense of what's going on globally. And I think it's quite encouraging that we specifically were looking at walking and cycling. And as Carly said in her introduction, actually more than 50% of the world now does have some sort of walking or cycling policy. And Africa is very much on that map. In relation to nationally determined contributions for walking and cycling, only about a quarter of countries at the moment have a policy. But I think it's quite helpful to understand that, generally speaking, 69% of the people who had an NDC for walking and cycling already had a policy. That does mean that there are at least 70 countries out there globally who have a commitment in their policy to walking and cycling that have yet to translate that to an NDC. But I think this is something for us to think about. Gailey, I can hear your typing. Can you mute yourself, please? Let me go, keep going. Thank you. When we think about that mapping of the political commitment, it is really encouraging to see that, yes, 19 countries out of 54 in Africa have a policy. 35% if you think about that from a country point of view. But what we also worked out was that actually more than half, 59% of the population in Africa now are supported to some extent with a walking or cycling policy. Now, we've looked at that in terms of whether it is national, whether it is subnational, and whether or not it's actually been delivered. You know, I know this thing, it's always a challenge to understand whether or not policies are being enacted, whether there's funding, whether they're being monitored or reported. We've had a go at trying to give some understanding of that, but of course that is something that is changing all the time. When we look at it from an NDC point of view, we found 10 countries in Africa who have made a commitment for walking and cycling in their NDCs. And I put some of the text down there. I think what's interesting is the variation of commitment that exists. Sometimes it's about building infrastructure, typically, as you see there in Sierra Leone, transport infrastructure to incorporate walkways and bicycle tracks. Sometimes it's about promoting active modes, like in Togo. In places like Lesotho and Malawi, and I think this is quite interesting that effectively this was the same document given by two different countries, almost word for word. They talk about constructing more health centres so that health facilities are within an 8-kilometre walking distance of the population. That is their target, or at least their ambition, and how investment in walking and cycling they're hoping could be useful. When you look at that context internationally, you see that very much the main commitment from a walking cycling point of view is towards infrastructure. I would have hoped, bearing in mind that Africa has some of the poorest conditions for walking and cycling in the world, and it's certainly the unsafest place to walk and cycle in the world, generally speaking. I would have liked to have seen more infrastructure improvement commitments at this point, and perhaps less necessary campaigns to encourage more walking and cycling, bearing in mind that 80% of the population are probably walking every day, and it may well be their main mode. And very little, in fact, no commitments in the Africa context towards integrating walking and cycling commitments into connecting that to public transport, which does feel like a missed opportunity. And as you can see, there's some regional variations in how things are happening. And I think just illustrating really maybe the opportunity of how we need to think about this and how we need to support the development of the ambition in the future. And when my sort of last but one slide, I've just done this today really, and really looked at clearly where, from an African point of view, there is policy, where there are NDC commitments, and who's got both. And it's an interesting list. It's not just that that there are still countries, obviously, who could do more. I think what's really interesting when I look at this is thinking, well, of course, all those people who've already got a walking or cycling policy could turn that relatively quickly, I assume, into an NDC commitment as well. But are they written by the same people? Not always, from what we could see. Those who've made an NDC commitment but haven't got a policy, you know, how fast would that could that be taken into developing a policy that could develop on that ambition? And I think even the ones in the middle who have both, they aren't automatically connected. I think Ghana is doing a lot more for walking and cycling, for instance, than it has made a commitment to in its NDC. So I think this is the challenge. It's actually a good story, but it still needs possibly a bit of tidying up. And so if I was sort of thinking that through about 2025 being the next moment that I think countries need to submit new NDCs, I think we've got a really useful time frame here right now, working with partners like UN Environment, SLOCAT, ITDP, etc., the network certainly, to actually think about how we could connect existing policy and NDC commitments together, support new policy at a national level to really make these more ambitious and universal across the region. And don't forget, I think as people said right from the beginning, we must make sure that the resources are there for delivery. There wasn't one country that I saw that had made a commitment who said that they were getting on with it, or that they didn't need more help in terms of either it was money, skills, expertise, or tools. And I think we need to be mindful that the policy commitment is not the be all and end all. It goes beyond that. And certainly the opportunity within the Africa Network for Walking and Cycling was very much about how we could showcase examples between countries, monitor and constantly improve on the commitments that people are making. Thanks very much. I hope that's been a start to sort of introduce where we are with policy commitments right now, and maybe some of the things we could think about how to help do more in the future. Thanks.
Thanks, Jim. That really gives us a sense of where some opportunity is. And I think we'll come back to your last slide when we get to the brainstorming. So we've understood about the MENA region. You have focused on the African continent because that's what we asked. It's where the network can work most effectively. We're now going to focus on the North Africa region that is part of MENA. And I'm really pleased to invite Nourel Deeb from ITDP, and she's based in Egypt. And she's going to share with us some of the work that they're doing with UN Environment on regional roadmaps and some case studies from Egypt, which, as we know, is where COP will be later this year. So thanks very much, Noor. Over to you.
Hello, hi everyone, and thanks, Bronwyn. It's great to be here. So let me share my screen.
Juliet, does she have the rights for sharing?
Yeah,
Is it okay?
check. Bronwyn, do you think I have the right to share my screen?
Yes, you have. She's a co-host.
Yes.
She can share her screen.
Sure. It should be just, I mean, I know we always say it should be straightforward, but.
I'm trying, sorry for that.
That's okay. It should be as simple as the green button, but is it not working?
The issue is that I cannot find the green button, but I'm trying to check if
So
I can share it from else.
On the bottom of the Zoom?
Yeah, that's what I know. I don't have.
You don't have it down there?
No. I'm trying to check if I could get it from somewhere else.
Okay. So just while Nora's doing that, if you want to start, we've got some comments in the chat. If you want to start dropping some ideas or comments into the chat, we'll also have a Jamboard open for our brainstorming session to look at those opportunities for walking and cycling in the lead up to COP. How can we help, Nora, in terms of...
Do you mind if I shared it with you? Or if you could share the presentation
Sure,
slides?
yes. Yeah, please do. Send it through. So we can make the slides available to people afterwards. We have we'll share afterwards the findings from the brainstorming conversation and a sort of a summary of the workshop today and a link to some of the slides. So let me see if that's come through. Great. Okay, I'm just opening that up. And as soon as I can see it on my screen, I'll share it with. Great, here we go. Let me share this.
Thank you, Bronwyn, for fixing that.
That's all right. It's the almost inevitable. Now, I'm just going to leave it like this. Is that visible enough, Nor?
Yeah,
right?
It is.
Great. All right, go ahead and just ask me to move the slides on when you need.
Okay, thanks. All right. So hi, everyone, and sorry for that technical issue. I'm Noor Deep from the Institute for Transportation and Development Policy, and I'm Africa Programs Manager and also act as the country lead for Egypt, as I'm based in Cairo. And today I will be talking to you about a new initiative by UNEP, a tool that is the North Africa Regional Roadmap for Walking and Cycling, by showcasing Egypt as a case study. Next, please. So just to give you a quick brief about ITDP for who doesn't know about it, we are a nonprofit organization that was established in 1985, and we do have offices across the globe where our headquarters is in New York. Also, we work around the globe to develop high quality transport systems and policy solutions that would make cities more livable, equitable, and sustainable. Next, please. So just like a refreshment of what are the basic elements for NMT, because many would think that NMT is only about street design, but it actually also includes building design and network designs in the design of an NMT project. So for street designs, we usually focus on how to create a safe and accessible footpath and cycle tracks and safe crossings for pedestrians. Also, we look at having adequate shade to act as a shelter, maybe from the rain or from the hot weather. Also having adequate lighting in the streets to make it safe for pedestrians and especially for women. Also looking into traffic calming measures and something like traffic lights and tabletop crossings. Also looking at spaces that are quietly dedicated for driving and parking. Looking into the building designs, we also want to see or to create a visually active frontages and physically permeable frontages. Like in Cairo, for instance, we were doing a survey to have a kind of a gender assessment on streets in Cairo, and women mentioned that they feel very safe when they're walking through a street that has many shops where they could see people inside and people inside can see them also. Just in case anything happened, they know that there is a person nearby where they can go to. We also look to design for a compact urban form. Regarding the network design, we also strive to design small blocks because it makes it easy for pedestrians to reach to their locations, and also the walking distance is smaller. and needless to say that it creates or could enable us to create an integration with the public transport. Next, please. So the North Africa Regional Roadmap for Walking and Cycling, it's a project initiated by UNEP with many different stakeholders. And the ITDP on that project is assisting with the North Africa and East Africa regions. And in my presentation today, I will be talking about the North Africa by showcasing Egypt. Next. So the objectives of the roadmap, it acts as a tool for governments and cities to raise the profile of active mobility, highlighting the role of NMT in addressing climate crisis and air quality issues. It also defined common priorities related to the walking and cycling. In addition, it catalyzes walking and cycling investments by national and city governments and development banks. There is always that missing link or connection between the development banks and cities. So what will the roadmap strive to do is try to connect those main sides together. It will also spread a dialogue and knowledge sharing among governments across the country and also across the full region. And last but not least is identify the key performance in order to enable governments to track progress over time. So we can see that many cities, they really need to start developing their NMT infrastructure and to do better mobility planning. And for that, let's first look at the challenges that we face, the NMT challenges that we face in Egypt. And for this, yes, please. And for Egypt, the challenges we face here, it's quite common in many other African cities as well. Next, please. So before I proceed, let me tell you, give you a quick taste of Egypt. We have a level of urbanization of 40%, and also the current urban population is almost 100 million, and it's expected to grow to 120 million by 2030. So we really need to start looking for how we can accommodate the rapid growth of urbanization and how this can be dealt with. Next, please. So let's look at how people travel. Like in Cairo, public transport is the dominant mode of transportation, accounting for almost 70%. And secondly comes moving by cars. And as you can see that NMT make up the smallest share of about 13%, where most of the trips are made entirely by walking. So the infrastructure is totally unequipped to make walking safe and dignified, and that's why national leaders need to start looking at how to face and eliminate, or not eliminate, but help solve such challenges. So as you can see here, there are a few images of minibuses and microbuses that people use for transportation. Next. And also there, in many cities, there high quality footpaths exist. Next, but the issue is that they're not well connected, and in most cities they're not complete. For instance, as you can see in that image, the footpath is very tight, making people do encroachments on the streets and walking and utilizing the space that is used for cars. Next, please. Also, most of the footpath, they're compromised by parking encroachments and vending encroachment, making it really hard for people to walk safely. Next, please. If we looked at other aspect of it, is the lack of adequate lighting, which really affects the safety and personal securities of pedestrians on the road. And also, again, referring back to the survey we have done regarding gender aspects, we found that most of the people, like, number one priority is to have a well-lit road to be able to walk. And next, please. Cycling is a common form of mobility in secondary cities, and that's why we need to focus on enhancing the infrastructure. And next, in Cairo, like many areas lack dedicated cycle facilities, or although there is a demand for it, but the supply of the cycle tracks is very low. Next. And if they exist, the cycle lanes, they have design flows that prevent people from using it. Like as you can see here, there's a very clear line between the asphalt for cars and the one for bike lanes, because it's not properly maintained, and thus people are not properly using it. Next, please. As mentioned, like the building design is very important. This is one of the buildings in downtown area, and it offers a great example of shade for pedestrians. So when we try thinking about construction of buildings, we can also make use of the design to help with the NMT messaging. Next, please. So summarizing the issues that we have, I like to group them into three main things: infrastructure design, and street management, and cycling culture. For the design, we have seen that there are inadequate footpath coverage, in addition to unsafe pedestrian crossings. Also, there is no dedicated cycling facilities. Regarding the street management, there is a great lack of parking management and also vendor management, and as we have seen, the maintenance of the roads and with respect to the cleanliness or the pavements or the street lights is not very high. Regarding the cycling infrastructure or the culture of it, we need to start accepting female cycling and also the socioeconomic stigma. Next, please. And for that, we need to think about how the roadmap would be a tool to to enhance and make sure that we have commitments from the government, and how we need high-level commitments. So what the roadmap would be trying to accomplish is to reallocate street space for active mobility by ensuring that major cities try to adapt a high-quality footpath. Also reduce the speed in urban areas, because reduction in speed can significantly reduce the road crashes, the injuries, and fatalities. Develop cycle network plans, like cycling is a sustainable mode of transport that offer low-cost pollution. It's another also pollution-free mobility. Adapt urban street guidelines. Most of the guidelines that we see are car-centric highway design guidelines, so we need to start shifting from that. Also, cities need to think about implementing bike sharing system as it serves short trips and also improve last mile connectivity to the public transport. So while the roadmap is trying to accomplish these aspects, there has been projects that have been initiated or due implementation in Egypt, and the roadmap is the right tool here to help scale up the projects across the country and across the region, and also help inspire cities to learn from each other. So let's see what have been implemented in Cairo.
Noah?
Yeah.
No, sorry, I'm really sorry to interrupt. I know you've got a really fantastic example from Cairo, but I'm just conscious of the time because we have only half an hour left for our meeting, and I wonder whether we might do some conversation at the national government level, like looking at the roadmap and the material from Shivam and from Jim, and then we will come back to your specific city example, and we'll hear also from Heretten at that time as well. So if we don't mind interrupting you now, I'm sorry, it's a bit of a change, but I'd really like to, while we're thinking about the regional roadmap and about the national data, let's have that conversation, and then we'll come back to this great, the slides about the bikeways in Cairo to inspire everybody, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
Great.
Sure.
Great, thanks, Noor. I mean, it's most excellent to see the work that you're doing there, but I would really like to open the floor to everybody now, and I've shared a link to the Jamboard, and looking at some of these questions. So we've got regional roadmaps that Noor is leading on in the North Africa region, that she's already outlined for you. We've got Jim's analysis of the mismatch between policy and the NDCs, and Shivan's presentation on the data that illustrates the imperative. And we're all aware that electrification is not going to solve all the problems. We do need this, and it's a challenge in some of these regions for very different reasons. So I wanted to open the floor for discussion. I've created the Jamboard, which is focusing on the question about what are our best pathways to build momentum for walking and cycling over the coming months, building on the presentations that we've had today. But I'm very happy to reflect or answer any questions that any of you might have for the particular speakers, that can help us foster some of these ideas. And then we'll come back to some of those street level city initiatives that will inspire us at the end of this. So I'm really interested if people have some questions. If you want to raise your hand, use the function in the app to raise your hand. You know, we have a region of the world, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, that isn't motivated by climate policies necessarily. They have a lot of other reasons to act. And so we'll have to look at how we can join up agendas. But please, can I go to you as the audience if you've got any particular questions or comments on the presentations? I've seen some in the chat already. I just want to give you the chance to follow up on that. Please go to the Jamboard, grab a post-it note. I've put some on in pink to put some of those questions there, so you are welcome to add your comments and observations there. I'm just giving everyone a minute to see if someone has a specific question or suggestion about ideas that we can take for this next opportunities for engagement. Perhaps then I'll come to Noor. I'd like to actually ask you a question, because I'm really interested in the relationship between the national government, because at one level we are talking to national governments, nationally determined contributions, and Jim has already highlighted that they might have NDCs but not have a national commitment to taking action. And how do we build that relationship with city and local governments and national governments? You're working in this space a little bit. Do you find that this is some synergies that you can start to build on, or is there a mismatch here? Can you share some experience with this relationship between local authorities and national governments?
Yeah, of course. So it really depends on from one country to another, because it depends on the institutional framework and the hierarchy. Like for instance, in Egypt, we wanted to implement the bike sharing system, and the bike sharing system is under Cairo Governorate. And there was, we thought about, instead of start with a pilot, we'll start with a pilot area. That's why we chose Cairo Governorate to start there, and then we can always scale up once we have a successful pilot project to other governorates as well. Another project, for instance, was with creating a sustainable urban mobility plans. So we have developed a SUMP for Sharm el-Sheikh, which is in South Sinai Governorate, and that's also the city that's hosting the COP. And for this, we totally shifted from Cairo and checked if what the possibilities be, that if we targeted another governorate, are they willing to adapt it? Are they willing to implement or not? So it's always good to knock the doors at different agencies and see how will the response be. Of course, it's not always you're lucky enough that everyone would respond, but you have to try.
And do you get national government supporting those cities in the non-motorized travel sustainable mobility agenda, or do you find that this is still something to engage at the national government in Egypt?
So for the national government, for instance, the way it's somehow done here, that we have like the local governorates, and we have also a kind of an authority for new cities. And the authorities for the new cities is under the umbrella of the Ministry of Housing. So the Ministry of Housing gets to take care of the new cities and also the national level. So for instance, away from the NMT, we were trying to implement the BRT in one of the new cities, and this is where we had to reach to the Ministry of Housing to be able to help with that. But also, if we're talking about the dissemination of roadmaps and of NMT strategies, this is where you need to reach to national authorities to help you with the implementation.
And do you think also that the funding is critical to come from the national authority as well for some of your pilot schemes? I know with ITDP you're working as an NGO, but do you see that there is a need for that sort of political and financial prioritization at a national level to support local authorities to act? Or do you get enough traction with local authorities without it? Sorry, yeah, go on.
Yeah, definitely you need to shift or to secure funding on a national level for that, and which is lacking. It's not only lacking in Egypt, but I believe in many North African cities, the idea of securing funds for NMT might not be there. And that's why we need to start directing the mindset to and showcase the importance of allocating funds for NMT. And also a common question that we are usually asked here, if we're presenting or preparing a policy, then well, do we have the fund to start implementing those projects? And sometimes they need to directly jump to the implementation without having those kind of policies. But I believe that those policies or tools are very helpful for decision makers to start in the beginning to allocate the funds for those NMT projects so we can have it.
Yeah, it's really interesting also that you identified that it was the Department of Housing that is one of the big agencies that is behind this agenda. And I guess for many years, the environment agenda has been led by departments of environment. Transport has come on. Transport has been there, particularly for the walking and cycling agenda, active mobility. Health is in this conversation. And now we are seeing that the housing and the development is another agency that needs to be engaged, which taps into, again, this need for this multi-agency sort of collaboration. And that's where the regional roadmaps potentially, do you see as being a focal point for different agencies to come together and understand how they can contribute to the walking and cycling agenda? Can we use the roadmaps in that way as a common, like, hymn sheet or whatever for the different agencies, do you think?
Yes, of course. Like the roadmap, it acts as a tool to bring action to walking and cycling. The kind of projects that we would have, it would initiate new projects. It would help scale up new projects. Like if we're saying there's a bike share in Marrakesh and a bike share in Cairo, so how can Algeria and Tunisia start implementing it as well? It would also help us to take good practices from other sister cities and make sure that governments try to implement it as well.
Great, thanks very much. I see some people are putting notes onto the Jamboard, and thank you for that. And inevitably, the different experiences from different countries around the continent. I welcome you on the Jamboard. You can get a sticky note from the left or copy one of the ones on the right. I'm just looking for any questions or hands up from the audience. And if anyone has any particular ideas as we or questions that they want? Because I'm going to move on to this sort of the agency factor. You know, how do we harness these other agendas? And we're going to hear from the Global Designing Cities Initiative, which of course is funded by Bloomberg and has a focus on road safety. But it's the same result on the ground, which is better walking and cycling. The UN resolution and the new decade of action for road safety clearly identifies that increasing walking and cycling and building safe infrastructure for walking and cycling is a road safety action, just as it is a climate challenge action, as a city livability action or a physical health for public health action. And so I'm interested that we've got housing, we've got these different ministries. Does anybody else have any experiences with their governments around what motivates them to invest or to take up this agenda? Or any questions from anybody in the audience? Do we need our cities perhaps to push upwards for our national governments, or is it our national governments enabling our city agendas? Any thoughts?
Maybe I could just pick up on something you said there, reading in the chat as well. It's interesting about who is got this responsibility, and in looking at many of the NDC commitments, they're written by climate departments or environment departments, not necessarily with transport people engaged, as far as I can see. And in previously, when we've done surveys through the Africa Walking and Cycling Network, we found that the main barriers were not a lack of enthusiasm, it was a lack of partnerships between the cities and at a national level, and between different departments. Sometimes, certainly the finance department seemed to be very rarely involved from the people who were writing the policy. And I see that seems to be a common thing that is being suggested in the network. Advocacy groups who aren't being listened to, transport departments who are spending money on things that aren't necessarily going to deliver the climate commitments, even if those climate commitments have been made. And I did pick on in my slides, but I didn't focus on it. We know what percentage from the SLOCAT database, we know what percentage of climate greenhouse gases come from transport for every country. That's part of the SLOCAT database. It's really interesting, actually. And in looking at the countries who have made a commitment to more walking and cycling, or investment in walking and cycling, some of them, like Tanzania, 49%, nearly 50% of Tanzania's greenhouse gases come from transport, 50% from Cape Verde, 49% from Lesotho. And I just wonder whether these things, you know, making this connection between climate commitments and transport decisions, maybe that's where the Africa Network in particular could focus.
Thanks, Jim. I'm going to leave the Jamboard open so that people can drop their ideas in, and I see them continuing just to come in as we're talking. And so perhaps maybe while you're doing that, Noor, we'll come back to your case study for Cairo, and we can share that with the group and inspire potentially some other ideas. Now, I think this was where we got to. So would you like to continue? Thanks, Noor.
Yes, sure. Would you mind just zooming in a little bit? I guess you're on mute.
Is that better?
Mm,
Let me just bring it up a bit
no,
bigger.
it didn't change much. But it's okay. If it's not changing, it's fine, I guess. We can still see it.
Let me see. Oh, I know what's wrong. I'm sorry. Let me just... There we go. Is that better?
Yes, much better.
Great.
Thanks. Yeah, so to continue our discussion, I was going to show some of the projects that the roadmap can help with, where it can provide advice on the NMT facilities that needs to be improved and how cities can start implementing bike sharing. And here is Cairo is on the course to implement its first bike share system with an initial fleet of 250 bicycles and a coverage area of 6.4 square kilometers. And the system is slated to launch by June this year, and it would be expanded to 500 cycles by early next year. Also, the city is planning to implement 15 kilometers of physically separated cycle bike lanes. Next, please. In order to ensure that, like to promote cycling as a safe and healthy transport alternative. And next, please. And here's an example of downtown where is the place that will be hosting the first bike sharing system and the bike lane network. This is a square called Talat Harb Square. It's in downtown area, one of the busiest areas in Cairo. As you can see, this is the existing picture of it, and next is a proposed render. As you can see, we have tried to make a more compact design for the roundabout. We have added the cycle tracks, bollards in order to avoid parking encroachments, and also we have ensured that there is dedicated or wide enough footpath for people, because the pedestrian activity there is very high due to also the commercial activity that is there. It's a mixed-use area, residential, and also many offices over there. And as you can see on the right, we have added the bike share stations. Like the system is hopefully going to launch in next June, so we're really looking forward for that. But the bike lanes, unfortunately, is still in process for the approvals. Next, please. So we have also been working on public spaces. This is one of the parking lots, again, in downtown area. Next, please. And as you can see in this design, we have tried to prioritize the space for cyclists and pedestrians to be able to make the most out of it. Next, please. This is another project, but ITDP is not involved in, but a project that I really admire is that the government has seen the need for having a walkway, and this project has just been launched in this this year, where it has this walkway. It's a 54 kilometers walkway, but only few kilometers were open this year. It includes bike lanes, water fountains, commercial shops, and also lots of greenery areas. And the good thing is that the government have seen that they need to provide access for people on the waterfront and remove any encroachments on the river. And that's why they started thinking of having that kind of project. And I think cities could really inspire each other to have such walkway. Next, please. So another example of the kind of planning process that the cities needs to have, and that the kind of the roadmap will encourage to do, is that the cities need to start developing a sustainable urban mobility plan. And this is an example of how Sharm el-Sheikh have a comprehensive transport plan that provide the long-term vision for mobility in Sharm. And it also acted as, it comes under the umbrella of an integrated strategic plan for Sharm el-Sheikh, where the goal is to provide efficient and convenient mobility for all. Next, please. So the integrated mobility system for Sharm el-Sheikh, it worked on 5 key pillars. First of all is having a connected pedestrian environment. Also having a complete cycle network and mapping, where we map the potential coverage areas and station locations. Third thing is having or providing convenient public transportation and integrated public transport system. We also focused on shared ride services. And last but not least is land use transport integration, where providing how we can, or advice on how we can integrate public transportation within the new developments. Next, please. Last thing I would like to say that ITDP really grows through publications, and we have published before the Streets for Walking and Cycling, but we have translated it into Arabic, and we have Egyptianized it by showcasing pictures from Egypt with the challenges that we face, the good examples that we have. And because we would like our publications to reach to as many people, to policymakers, to decision makers, and to the government with the correct guidelines that we need to follow for proper NMT infrastructure and planning. And also we're looking forward to translate other publications, so make sure it reaches a wide array of audience. Thanks you all, and thank you, Bronwyn, for the help and for taking the lead of next on slides.
Great, thanks, Noor. It is really fantastic to see the work that you're doing in Egypt, and it gives us hope that with the connections that ITTP have, I know that they're already working at the global level and with SLOCAT and the UNFCCC to bring walking and cycling to the agenda for COP in November, and we look forward to contributing to that. So thank you very much. Great pictures. I do hope that roundabout's installed by the time we travel there in November. That would be fantastic. I'd like to go now to Hayrettin Gunç, who is from the Global Designing Cities Initiative, and he's got some examples from Addis Ababa where they have been working on improving road safety, but you'll see a lot of familiar road infrastructure interventions to what Noor has illustrated here, because once you translate these global agendas to street level, we find some great results there. So I'm going to stop sharing Noor's screen, and Hayrettin, if you would like to share yours. Yep, there you are. Fantastic. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to share our work. I was given the difficult task today to inspire you for action, but I'll pick it up from where Noor left off. I'll talk more about some of the street transformations we do around the world, and especially in Addis. And I want to talk about how these street scale transformations can also inform high level policies. Just to start with a quick introduction, my name is Hayrettin Gunç, and I am a program manager at Global Designing Cities Initiative. For those of you who are not familiar with GDCI, we are a nonprofit organization with a mission to transform streets around the world. And we work with leaders, practitioners, and invite communities to imagine what's possible when we design streets that put people first. And to do so, we mostly rely on our design guidelines. These are resources that compile strategies and best practices from around the world, and they've been applied in different cities across the globe. Today, I want to share a project that we worked on in the past couple of years, which is part of a larger initiative called Bloomberg Initiative for Global Road Safety. It is focused on road safety. The goal of this initiative to reduce fatalities and injuries from road traffic crashes. But like we were saying, I think there's a lot of connections with the climate action themes that we heard today, and hopefully we can talk about it a bit more. Road crashes has been a global problem. We know 1.35 million traffic fatalities happen every year on our streets. And a statistic that's quite sad and striking is traffic fatalities is the #1 killer of our young people around the globe of age 5 to 29. So this initiative focuses on eliminating one of the biggest risk factors, which is speed. We know high speeds kills, and in order to ensure that crashes don't end up with fatalities and injuries, we want to reduce speed. So as GDCI, our goal is to do so by changing street design, the physical properties of our street. So I'll share one project that we did in Addis, like a couple of years ago now. And this project is called Legar Intersection Transformation. And we started this project actually in 2015. And at that time, we were informed that 80% of all fatalities and injuries in the city were pedestrians. And when you look at these photos, you can see and understand why the streets of Addis were dangerous for people that were walking. And we knew that pedestrian-oriented designs could dramatically improve safety in these areas. So we also knew that like 70% of the trips in the city were done by walking, but yet all the space were allocated to, most of the space, let's say, allocated to vehicles. So our goal was to reallocate the space so pedestrians can safely navigate through this intersection, and we reduce vehicle speed so crashes don't end up with critical injuries or fatalities. So we started with this at Legar. The first step in the transformation was one-day pop-up. So we applied some of these principles, which made it much safer. As you can see, the sidewalk extensions, the refuge islands, pedestrian crossings are shorter, as well as this tighter turning radii in order to make these turns slower. Here you can see a bit better, the crossing distance, which was 50 meters, became much shorter, and the turning radii also became much tighter. So the pop-up was successful, but it was a one-day temporary event. When it was gone, we saw, like, after 6 months, there were still fatalities and injuries in the intersection. So the city, this triggered city to take a more bolder action. And in December 2016, with the help of over 100 people, in this case, we transformed it into an interim intervention. And we used, again, inexpensive materials like bollards, planters, and paint, and reclaimed over 2,000 square meters to make the space look like this. And this was also, again, a transformation, a temporary transformation that lasted 6 months. And you can see here the general timeline. This is a methodology that we are trying to also to show to different cities. You see, what I want to emphasize here is the data collection. So we use this pop-up and interim interventions to collect data, improve our design. And after 6 months of interim, we moved on to the permanent transformation, which is from this to this. You can see here, the paint was replaced by more permanent materials like paved stones, and so forth. So you see here the 3 different stages, and just as a way to make cities more comfortable with making these changes, bringing in more community support before making any big investments. So we think these work really well. And we also said the data collection is critical. You see here the dramatic reduction in speeds, 13% increase in crossing compliance. People were using crosswalks after the implementation. And just want to show this as part of the conversation today. A lot of cities are investing a lot of money on infrastructure, but we should also think about where does that infrastructure investment go. We know underpasses, pedestrian bridges, these are expensive infrastructure elements, but in a lot of cases, they don't really make conditions safer for pedestrians. So when we did our calculations, we realized we could make 500 of these improvements in these intersections for just the cost of a single underpass or 20 pedestrian bridges. So I think it's really important to think about the pedestrian infrastructure investments, but how do we allocate that investment? This is critical too. I'll wrap up here. I know my session was as a quick one. So just to also think about how we scale up impact. So we started with those projects, and Noor also talked about the NMT strategies. So the city was also thinking about these high-level policies and plans at the same time. And one thing we were able to do is create this program around safe intersections. So what we did at Legar wasn't a single intervention. The city committed to make 10 of these every year, and did it. Like there are different examples here. You see again and again how we can create the safe infrastructure for vulnerable street users like pedestrians or cyclists, even with limited resources. So I think this was an amazing experience in Addis to show how we can start with something small on the ground, and that can scale up to have a citywide impact. So I'll stop here. Just want to thank you, and if you want to follow up with any questions, please feel free to email me.
Wow, fantastic. Thanks, Hayrettin. That was incredibly concise and inspiring. I wrote down 3 things which I saw in your presentation, which I think is really important for us to hold on to, is that you talked about that crosswalk compliance improved when the crosswalks themselves actually improved. And I think this is a really critical thing. The research has been there nearly the whole time I've worked at Walk 21, is that if you put the right crossings in the right place, then people are much more likely to use them and to create that improved safety in the environment. So the right infrastructure does change behavior and does enable people to move safely. The other thing which I thought was really great was that infrastructure investment slide, where what are we choosing to spend our money on? And the thing that we learned in our survey of African cities, African government officers, was that they all believe there's enough money in the system, it's just not being spent in the right way. And that's a brilliant presentation, a brilliant illustration of how we can change the environment with the right targeted investment. And we will always say that those overpasses are not pedestrian overpasses. They're for pedestrians, but they're actually motor-centric, infrastructure, as you would know. And so having sort of those illustrations of the choices that we make around the right infrastructure does improve behavior as well as safety. The infrastructure investment can be wisely targeted. And then the last thing you talked about around scaling up and having that rollout impact. And we heard that from Noor as well, in terms of getting up that momentum and each city wanting. I know for bike share programs, it was certainly a case of they became something most cities wanted even before they had the infrastructure in place. So you do get that little bit of keeping up with the Joneses that happens. So maybe we can have some ambition for that with our nationally determined contributions and our national policies, that it becomes a sort of a thing that most governments need to see. We've had some really interesting suggestions on the Jamboard. I thank you all for that. The Jamboard will stay open for the rest of today if anybody has an idea and wants to come back to that. I just wanted to check in with everybody before I do the final wrap up. If anyone had any questions for any of our speakers now that we're nearing the end of our discussions. We've seen some fantastic work in 2 very different but also very much the same African cities, same as everywhere, where there's lots of space and lots of cars, and getting the right investments in the right place. Any questions or any comments from anybody? And I see some people have had network connections issues. It's always a challenge, and I'm sure we can make some of this material available. As I said, we'll share the outcomes from this, from the presentations and the discussions today. Well, it leaves it just to me. We've got some really interesting ideas, and I know that between the African Network and with the Slow Cap Partnership and the other presenters here today, that we are all in a shared conversation about how to bring walking and cycling to COP in November. And we've definitely got some leads around initiatives and around policies and around interventions that we can grow a stronger voice, both for the African continent, for the MENA region, and globally for walking and cycling. I wanted to thank everyone for joining us. I particularly thank my speakers for your presentations and for contributing to the discussion and bringing the different perspectives and all the different points on the map that we have to join together, because as much as we all know how fantastic walking and cycling is and the benefits are well documented for most aspects of the value that they bring to our humanity and our communities, we still are not seeing the same valuing of them either at a national level or at the political level at the climate talks. And we'll be working hard to do that this year and drawing down on the African Network. And if any of you are not part of the African Network yet, please be in touch with me or Juliet to join us. We've got different working groups and work plans on particular aspects of that work. We do have all of network meetings, and we'll be growing those activities over the year. So I invite you very much to join us for that. It just leaves me to say thank you to everybody, and we have got 1 last minute if anybody has any final comments or remarks to make in the chat. Thank you all for coming and contributing to this discussion and putting walking and cycling on the climate agenda. Thank you. Juliet's posted the link for the network in the chat as well, so they can follow up. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Very much looking forward to continuing on this work. Thank you.